Hi everyone, I'm Sinman. Just let me start my screen for a while. Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm Sinman from the Smart Nation and Digital Government Office. Okay, so today we'll find out about the government efforts in fighting dengue and including the use of smart technologies to overcome the spread. Okay, so now as we see, as Singapore actually overcomes slowly going to the tail end of the second phase of the coronavirus, the other viral infection that we pay attention today is actually dengue fever. So today we're actually looking at, firstly, what is dengue? How is dengue transmitted? Dangers of dengue. Secondly, the ways we can do our part to keep dengue at bay. Thirdly, efforts by the National Environment Agency, NEA, to fight dengue, and we'll be highlighting the technology used, such as the smart Gravitraps, as well as their MyENV app. And lastly, as Terry mentioned, we'll go into Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them using the Q&A button, or later during Q&A time, we can actually unmute your microphone if you would like to. So let's start. Firstly, what is dengue? So dengue fever is actually a disease that is caused by the dengue virus and is spread through the bites of an infected female Aedes mosquito. So over here you see a picture that shows an Aedes mosquito. So they are identified by the black and white stripes on their bodies. So a bit of history here. Did you know that the Aedes aegypti mosquitoes originated in Africa, but they are spread through tropical and subtropical regions around the world? So Aedes aegypti mosquitoes actually first spread outside of Africa during the slave trade between the 15th and the 19th centuries. They also spread through trade with Asia during the 18th and 19th centuries, and then again following the troop movements during World War II. Now, let's look at the symptoms of dengue fever. So if you actually observe continuous fever, severe headache with pain behind the eyes, joint and muscle pain, skin rash, nausea, vomiting, or mild bleeding in the gums or the nose, they are actually suggestive of dengue. So please seek help early so you can be diagnosed and managed accordingly. Because early diagnosis actually can facilitate better case management, and importantly, persons with dengue can also help to prevent further transmission by applying the repellent regularly so mosquitoes do not bite them and pick up the virus from them. So the other question is, how is dengue transmitted? Can it be passed on from one person to one person? Actually, no. So dengue fever is actually transmitted to humans via the bite of an infective female Aedes mosquito. So as you can see here, the mosquito actually bites a person with the dengue virus in the body, and the mosquito then becomes infected. Unfortunately, it has gone on to bite other healthy people and actually transmitted the dengue disease to them. So it proves that actually dengue fever does not spread from person to person, but it's via an effective female Aedes mosquito. And then you probably ask, but why is dengue dangerous? Okay, firstly, actually there are 4 strains of the dengue virus. So having a previous case of dengue does not make you immune to the virus. If let's say I have caught DENV1 and I catch it again, I catch maybe the second strain, it's actually very likely that my second time around will be more severe than the previous one. And dengue fever is actually definitely more severe than just an average fever. It can actually weaken the body greatly and is potentially life-threatening. So dengue fever can actually progress to even more severe forms, such as the dengue hemorrhagic fever, which can cause severe bleeding and a sudden drop in blood pressure. And actually, it can turn the body into shock and it results in death. Actually, this year, it has already killed 20 people. So now we look at in Singapore. So in Singapore, unfortunately, we live in a climate that is perfect for the mosquitoes to spread dengue. But dengue typically peaks from June to October every year, partly due to the dry, wet weather changes during this monsoon period. So every year, about thousands of cases here of dengue, and roughly 0.1% die. And this year is actually the largest dengue outbreak in Singapore's history. And it's actually partly due to COVID-19. Because one major contributor to the spike in the dengue cases was actually the circuit breaker and the stay-home measures. So this led to actually less frequent checks on the various breeding sites. And then because of this, there was an increase in the number of residential breeding sites. And therefore, the chances of getting bitten by the female Aedes mosquito is even higher. And since the start of 2020, there has been more than 28,000 recorded cases. In the month of August alone, just last month, there were actually about 6,100 new dengue cases. So then we asked, what can we do to protect our families from dengue? So I'll be introducing to you a few actions that we can take. So primarily, number one is definitely to prevent the Aedes mosquito from breeding in and around our homes. Mosquitoes actually prefer to breed in clean, stagnant water easily found in our homes. And it really does take the size of a 20-cent coin of a volume of water for them to breed. So the graphic here actually shows common mosquito breeding habitats like pails, flower vases, flower pot plates, the roof gutter, and drains. So please remember to check them regularly and turn them over to avoid pooling of water. And other habitats also include like toilet brush holders or drying trays at our kitchen sinks, and also the bamboo pole holders at our HDB flats. So secondly, let's look at how we can protect ourselves and reduce exposure. So if you know that you or your family are in an area with a high dengue cluster, or you are going to one, please try and wear long sleeves and pants wherever possible, and apply mosquito repellent. Mosquitoes love dark corners, like under the bed, the sofa, or behind the curtains. So do pay attention to them in these areas and spray insecticide where possible. Thirdly is definitely to observe your health. Well, now in these days, whether you have a fever, please straight away go and seek medical help. And therefore, definitely it'll be good if you also recognize the symptoms that we mentioned earlier. So now, how about the NEA efforts to fight dengue? So firstly, let's look at things that we see. So for instance, we see dengue inspection officers. So for our homes, actually NEA officers do go around visiting houses. So firstly, they will identify themselves with an NEA authority card and will explain the purpose of their visit. So do allow them into your home for inspection and spray insecticide to kill any mosquitoes. So also something to note, in July this year, in response to the sharp rise in dengue cases, NEA actually announced that households found with multiple mosquito breeding habitats during the inspections will face stricter penalties. So first-time offenders will be fined 200, and now it's gonna up to 300 if you find multiple mosquito breeding habitats within the home. So, and then next, in our neighborhoods, so other than our homes, NEA officers also inspect potential breeding areas and add insecticides to habitats such as roof gutters, drains, and other places where water cannot be removed. Sometimes you would see fogging as well, especially in areas that are definitely of a high risk. Okay, the next, you might have heard of the Project Wolbachia. So NEA actually has been conducting studies for this project in phases since 2016. is essentially a project to combat dengue by releasing specially bred mosquitoes. So, what is this word Wolbachia? Wolbachia is actually a very common bacteria that occur naturally in 60% of insect species, including mosquitoes, fruit flies, moths, butterflies, and dragonflies. So, and they are safe for humans and the environment. So it was actually discovered that when Aedes aegypti mosquitoes carry this bacteria, they actually help to fight the viruses like dengue or Zika. So in Singapore, this project will do is they will release male Aedes aegypti mosquito carrying this bacteria and hope that they will mate with the urban female Aedes aegypti mosquito and pass them this bacteria. And when the females actually carry these bacteria with them, their eggs do not hatch. And therefore, this actually greatly reduces the Aedes mosquito population and therefore the risk of dengue transmission. So remember, in the case of dengue, the female Aedes mosquito is very dangerous. Okay, so now let's now look at how we are actually fighting dengue with technology. First off, have you seen any of these contraptions before around your neighborhood? So just to introduce you to them, on the picture on the right is called the Gravitrap, and the one on the left is called the Smart Gravitrap. I'll introduce you to Gravitrap first. Okay, so what are Gravitraps? So Gravitraps are developed by NEA's Environmental Health Institute, and it's actually designed to attract and trap female Aedes mosquitoes looking to hatch their eggs. Secondly, it actually prevents the hatched mosquitoes from emerging from the trap. Every 2 weeks, actually, the NEA officers will come and they will inspect and actually maintain these Gravitraps. And then they will collect the number of mosquitoes trapped in this trap, and they will actually take these mosquitoes back to the lab to identify them. So with this information, it actually helps to monitor the mosquito population in the vicinity. And the data here actually helps NEA to prioritize the resources by directing officers to search for and destroy the breeding habitats at locations with the higher Aedes mosquito population. So as of now, there are more than 64,000 Gravitraps deployed island-wide to monitor the mosquito population in Singapore. So for these Gravitraps, where can you usually see them? You can usually see them in common corridors of HDB residential premises. And in January this year, NEA actually also additionally deployed these Gravitraps to private landed estates. And then you ask, what is this tiny dustbin looking Gravitrap and how do they work? Okay, so these small cylinders actually contain hay-infused water, which actually attracts these female Aedes aegypti mosquitoes looking for a place to lay their eggs. And when the mosquito actually fly in, there's a lining of sticky tape inside which helps to capture the mosquito. So, and even if the mosquito manages to lay the eggs before getting caught in the sticky tape, there is a barrier of wire mesh that prevents any hatchlings from making it to the outside world. And then the second question is, will Gravitrap add to the mosquito population in my area since it attracts mosquitoes and then, increase my chances of getting bitten by mosquitoes? Actually, no, because when the eggs are laid, the mosquitoes hatch will also stay trapped. Same for the female Aedes mosquito. So not to worry, the mosquitoes will escape out of the cylinder. So in summary, the Gravitraps help to monitor the Aedes mosquito population in the area. And the officers will actually search for these habitats in the areas with more mosquitoes trapped. And then now we see that the Gravitrap has slowly been upgraded, and the improved version is called the Smart Gravitraps. Well, it is essentially an intelligent mosquito surveillance device. So these smart Gravitraps actually retain the basic function of a Gravitrap, by attracting and trapping the Aedes mosquitoes. But it also includes the added function of a smart sensor. So the smart sensors in the device helps to count the number of mosquitoes in this device, and it also captures mosquito flight signatures. So what are flight signatures? Flight signatures are how the mosquitoes fly. So the data is then transmitted to the backend server and a database that contains the signatures unique to each gender and species of mosquito. So this helps to identify the mosquito species and gender. So you will know, for instance, in the area, how many female Aedes aegypti were caught, and these are the dangerous ones. And then you can compare the data across the different areas in Singapore, and then you can identify which area has a higher mosquito population than the others, and then provide a signal to alert us of areas that are high risk. So these data are collected and analyzed remotely. So this means that with the smart Gravitrap, there'll be lesser reliance on manpower, and the NEA officers no longer need to be on site to collect information from the traps, which also means that data is collected much faster. So the smart Gravitraps will thus enhance the surveillance of mosquito population and the spread of mosquitoes in Singapore, and help the analysis of the dengue prevention. So now you must be wondering, where and who does the data collected in these traps go to? So look at this video and see how mosquito analyst at the NEA's Environmental Health Institute, Janet Ong, introduced how she uses data in her work to help combat dengue.
So data analytics were used to enhance our situational awareness of dengue and providing early warnings of outbreak. EHI has worked with NUS to develop a dengue predictive model that provides forecasts of the dengue case trend and incidents up to 3 months ahead. So the analysis and modeling we did helps to provide early warning of outbreak and hence facilitate public health response. For instance, the dengue forecast could be used to guide the planning of public health intervention and educational campaign. Mosquito population is driven by many factors, including human behavior and activities on the ground. With NEA networks of Gravitrap deployed across the island, we are able to identify areas with high mosquito population. So now the public can go onto NEA website to check if their areas have high mosquito population. I do not go around Singapore checking for mosquito breeding, but instead I crunch mosquito data. I put together data collected by our inspection officer, analyze them and generate insights to help support decision making. So we are the back-end people that you don't see.
Okay, so with technology such as Gravitrap, it actually helps to reduce the time to get information, improve the accuracy and the speed of analyzing mosquito breeding trends, and help to reduce the threat of dengue. So in cases like this where time is critical, decisions can be made faster to quickly deal with the situation before it gets out of hand. Just like the contact tracing efforts done for COVID-19. So here, the NEA officers not only save time going to the ground for inspection, but it also allows more efficient deployment of limited manpower resources, and then use it to guide NEA's inspection efforts to focus on areas with higher mosquito populations. So there's a question. Have you seen such data before on a banner? So this informs you of the number of cases in the area you are in and whether it is a high-risk area. So let me introduce you to a better way to get these informations faster and up to date. So this is an app by NEA. It's called MyENV. When you download it and then you open the app, you actually can go to the settings and then select the notifications you would like to receive based on your location. So for instance, in my case, I select high alert advisories, which like indicate incidents like earthquakes, like maybe in the neighboring countries. And then the PSI, which stands for Pollutant Standards Index, which is an index of daily air quality levels, as well as dengue alerts. So therefore, the data that is retrieved from the Gravitraps and the smart Gravitraps can be viewed using the app. So one of the last things you can do is to protect your family from dengue is really to know the risk. So this is an example from my location at Ang Mo Kio. So here it shows if my home or my workplace or my school is near a cluster. So where you can see in the second picture, I'm actually dangerously near a high-risk cluster, which has since recorded 217 cases. And then in the second one, it also shows if there is mosquito breeding where I am. So luckily for me, I'm currently not in an area with a higher Aedes population. So the app has up-to-date information on dengue clusters and breeding. I can also save the address of important places like maybe my mom's place or my uncle's place and find out when the risk rises. So notifications will be sent out weekly if I enable the setting. So if you're interested, you may also download the My ENV app. These are the QR codes to download it. The QR code on the left is meant for iPhone and Apple users. And then the QR code on the right is for the Android users. So this will direct you to the Google Play Store. So that will be the end of the sharing.